Etrons had more captives than they had guests. At the same time, the riders moved around the villagers. They did not attack, they watched and spoke carefully, and with shepherds the Kipchans were useful because they could move faster and appear where the caster patrols did not accept them. In one village, a young shepherd told them that Valens had taken his father after the refuses to give extra sheep in another place. A woman said her sword in the castle stable and had seen armed men wearing Ottoman cloth hidden in a locked room. This was proof that villain still played false flag games. He might use Osman dress again, perhaps to blame Orhan from harming civilizations. The report reached Orhan by evening. His face grew harder. Valent had failed to break the Ottoman alliances, but he was not finished with lies. If he could make the villagers, soldiers, attackers them road of Tron would become hostile. People who might have opened their door would instead hide behind Valens. Orhan sent an Orhan order at once, not Ottomans or corrupt unite would enter any village without local witness and clear sign. Every action would be seen, and knowing darkness belonging to the enemy, Orhan would use daylight. The next day, Orhan rode to the nearest village himself. The villagers gathered in fear. They had heard stories from valiant men. They had been told that the Turk would take their homes, burn their crushes, and carry away the children. When Orhan entered, mother pulled children behind them. Old men lowered their eyes. Some young men had farming tools like weapons tough. Their hands shook. Orhan did not enter like a conqueror hungry of paradise. He dismounted before the village square and walked on foot. This surprised the people. He ordered his ape to keep their weapon order. A thick old man came forward, leaning on a stick, his voice trembling as he asked what Orhan wanted. Orhan answering himself, he wanted trust. He said Valen has used hostage, banner and secret killers. He said the Ottoman had come from the Lord who made the land bleed. Sporka asked the joint group. The attack began silently. 2 hours before the car delivery was pulled away from Hell. Orhan men took Hell Palace, covering themselves with cloaks. The Sporka climbs into the third car beside the hidden prisoners. She whispers that help and come. One prisoner began to cry, but she placed a hand gently over his mouth and told his silence will save lives. The cart rolled into the passages inside. The air was and close. Water dripped from the stone. The wall made a softened drinking sound. Orhan walked beside the cart, dressed as one of the drivers. His hand stayed there. Danger beside him came on few choices along the passage beneath. Twist there rose silently. The hidden part of castle smiled and draw iron and of old paint cells climbed the wall. Some had villages, some had soldiers, some has Valens drew in his hold. He saw by sunrise Ottoman castle was under Ottoman control. The main banner of Valens and lowered. The Ottoman banners rose, but Orhan ordered it raised without insulting the faith of the common people inside. He did not allow the chapel of the touches. He did not allow home to be looted. He ordered food store continued and shared fairly. Soldiers who had thrown down weapons were separated from the pack. Circlemen servants were questioned but did not punish without proof. Prisoners were brought into the open yard where families wound each other, which carries prayers and prayers. The villagers come to the castle slowly, still aware. They still saw their loved ones alive. The fear in the eyes broke into grief and relief. An old woman kissed the hand of the head free. The white hand moved. A throne castle had fallen, but the fall had not become smaller. It had become larger. The stone of castle were now under Sultan Orhan control, yet the air inside those walls until carried the smell of old fear. Every corner had a memory, every locked room had a story, every prisoner who came out of the lower chamber brought pain with them. Some had lost months, some had lost family, some had lost of feeling the world could ever be safe again. Orhan looked at them, understood that taking a castle was only the first duty. Healing with the castle unbroken would be much harder. The morning after the consequence did not awake like a free place. It would awoke like a wounded man opening his eyes after a long fever. People moved slow. Servants did not know if they should hide or come forward. Soldiers who had thrown down their weapons sat under guard with fear in their faces. Villagers came to the gate not in celebration but in doubt. They had heard many promises in their lives. Most promises had become taxes, chain or grave. So when Orhan told them they would be protected, many did not believe at once. Orhan did not blame them. Trust cannot be ordered like soldier, it must be earned step by step. In the main yard, Orhan ordered food to give for the first freed prisoners and the forest villagers. This surprised the people. Under violence, food had moved forward, the hungry for the strong, the weak serve the rich. Now Orhan wanted the first breed to go downward to the people who had carried the pain from the land. Some Arabs did not understand the meaning at first. They had fought, had they were tried, they also needed food, but Orhan told them there that a warrior can wait a little when he helpless have waited for years. His words were not rash, harsh, but they settled firmly. They asked, lowered their eyes and obeyed. As Porca spent the morning among the freed people, she listened more than she spoke. A mother searched for a son who was not among the rescue. A young boy would had carried him. An old man sat near the wall and stared the sky. If he was afraid, it whispered despair. Sporka had been fear before, but his was different. This was fear trained from over time. Valen had not locked bodies in calls. He had tried her to accept correctly. Sporka understood that Orhan justice would need a gentle face and much as a strong word. Aladdin Bey worked in the hall where Valen had kept his letter. The table was covered with documents, Steele's map, and small coded notes. Every paper was a piece of a hidden world. Some named spies, some listened payment, some showed village marked from pressure. Some carried symbols that even Aladdin could not read, yet the black circle network was damaged, but the prepared show it was only one hand for a larger body. Behind Valen stood another power named only by a symbol, the white hand. No true name, no face, no clear castle, only order, messages, and careful silence. Security had less patience for paper. He stood near the door with his wounded arm wrapped in cloth and looked at the documents like they were insects. He said, a man who hid behind letters could be dragged out and made to face the sun. Aladdin did not look up. He answered that many were Wanda reading the letter before the man reached the field. Security grumbled but slate even the understood that Atrons had taught them a lesson. The enemy no longer moved only with banners and armies. It moved through road coins, storage beer, and hidden name. Yvonne Bay inspected the lower chamber again. His wound had opened silently during the battle, but he ignored the pain. The prisoners under atoms were prisoners in daylight. At night darkness he covered some of its cruelty. Some now everything was visible. Rusted chains hung for walls. Names were stretched into stone. Small marks show where prisoners had gone day in one corner. Ebron found child wooden toy broken in half. He picked it up and for a long moment he had faced many enemies, but there are some there are things even a warrior cannot look at without feeling against in the bones. He ordered the chamber cleared, washed and sealed until Orhan decided what to do with them. No one would sleep again in those halls. Valence was held in an upper room guarded day and night. He no longer looked the proud lord or Atron. His fine clothes were dirty, his face was dried, his yet still carried poison. He believed defeat was only temporary. Men like Valence often believe that purity is wisdom and mercury is weakness. Even when they fall, they think the world must return to their way. He asked from wine. He asked for his personal servant. He asked to send messages to near Lord. The guard gave him water and silence. Orhan, when Orhan entered the room, Valence stood and straight as the could. He tries to smile. He said rules should respect each other even in defect. Orhan looked around the room, then at the man before him. He said, "A ruler protects the people under his hand. A man who steals children, holds villagers a hostage, and sends false banner against allies is not a ruler. He is discussed wearing a crown." Vanel's smile broke for no second, but he gathered it again. But he said, Orhan spoke beautifully, but all states were built on fear. Orhan answered that fear can force a gate open, but it cannot make a land loyal. Valen laughed softly and said, loyalty is only fear, a better name. Orhan did not argue future. Some men do not seek truth, they only seek a way to twist it. He told Valen that his trial would be held before witness. Valen mocked the world rival. He said the villagers would say whatever Orhan wanted because they features the new master. Orhan answered that his was why Valens would live long enough to hear them speak fairly. If he speak lied, Allah would know. If they spoke truth, the land would know. Valens' face hardened from the first time. He seemed less afraid of death than of being exposed. The trial was prepared in the castle yard. Orhan did not make it show of revenge. He ordered the escape arranged with care. Witness could stone one by one. Letter would be captured. Black circle men would be questioned. Villagers could speak, but no one would be allowed to attack the prisoners. This was difficult to control. Many people wanted to throw stones, some wanted to spit at Valens, others wanted him killed before sunset. Orhan understood their anger. He did not call it wrong, but he would not let anger become law. If the first act of Ottoman justice in Atron was calm mob revenge, then violence would win even in chain. The yard filled by mighty Ottoman apes stood one side, Kipan's riders stood on to the other, villagers and freed prisoners gathered in the middle. Valen was brought out under guard. He looked at the crowd with contempt, but the contempt was thinner now. He had ruled those people when they were afraid and divided. Now they stood together and their eyes he changed. People who speak their pain in public began to beg power from those from hurt them. The first witness was an old winner, his black man bent from ear underground. He spoke slowly but clearly. He told how violence forced men to work without pay, how God beat anyone who slowed down. Now some workers were taken into the castle and never returned. Valen interrupted, saying the winner lying because he wanted Ottoman favor. Orhan raised his hand and the guard silenced Valens. The alliance read a record found in Valens' own chamber. It listened the name of worker moved from the mine to the lower chamber. Several names match missing from villages. A motor moved through the yard. Next came a mother whose son had been held a hostage to force her husband into spying on the road. His voice shook at first. She looked at Valence and could bravely speak. Sporka stepped close, not to speak for her, but to stand near enough that the woman would not feel alone. The woman gathered strength. She said her husband had carried messages because her believed their child would be killed later. The husband was found dead near the river. The child was still missing. Valence looked away. That small movement told the crowd more than sword. The man Yusuf, the servant who had carried messages inside Orhan camp. He was brought under guard but not in chain around his neck. His brother, refugees from his old mill, stood behind him. Yusuf confessed before everyone had the marked network. He did not hide his guilt. He said he had does it because his brother was taken. He said violent men had made him chosen between betrayal and blood. He lowered him head and said he fear had near caused greatest death. The crowd listened in silence. Some hated him, some pitied him. Many understood justice might see him full shape of a deep, not only its result. Valen tries to use Yusuf confessions against Orhan. He said, see, your own camp was dirty, your own servant betrayed you. Why blame me for the weakness for your people? Orhan turned to him and answered, a wolf in guilty for biting a shepherd in guilty if he leaves the flock underguarded. Yusuf will answer for what he did. You will answer for making change and calling them politicals. The sword struck the yard. Even some captured soldiers lowered their eyes one by one. The witness spoke. The letters were read. The false banner plan was shown. The black circle strips were laid out on a table. The forget Ottoman order were brought forward. The crowd saw with his own eyes how Valens and planned to dress lies and trust. He had meant to turn allies against each other, villagers against Ottoman and the weak against their own rescue. Every document's closed, and other wrote to Daniel by late afternoon. Valence had stopped smiling. His face had become grey, but he still held one final weapon, knowledge of the White Hand. Orhan asked him before the crowded war had given higher order. Valence said nothing. Orhan asked again. Valence looked toward and four hills and said, some power cannot be touched by a young ruler from the frontiers. He said Orhan had taken one castle and thought he had touched the sky. The White Hand, he said, reached into castle, market, crushes, courts, and even tent where Turkish believed themselves safe. The world disturbed the people. That was what Valen had wanted, even in defeat. They wanted to plant fear. Orhan did not let the fear grow. He stepped forward and spoke so cold here. The state walked through fire. The night was heavy over the Ottoman camp. The sky was dark, but the darkness on the faces of the people was deeper. No one spoke loudly, no one laughed near the fires. The horses stood restless if they also felt that a storm was coming. The women moved between the tent with quiet step. The Arabs sharpened their sword, but even the sound of metal felt sad. Every person in the camp knew that the enemy had not only attacked a few men, the enemy had touched the honor of the state. They had tried to frighten Sultan Orhan. They had tried to make the people doubt his power. They had tried to show that the new Ottoman state could be wounded from every side, but they did not understand one thing. A state born in hardship does not die from hardship. A nation raised with pain does not run away from pain, it stands stronger. Sultan Orhan came out of his tent before sunrise. He did not wear the face of a tired man, he wore the face of a ruler who had made a decision. His eyes looked calm, but behind that calm there was a fire. He looked at the camp, at the Arab, and the mother, at the children, and at the banner moving in the cold wind. This was not only his father's dream, anyone. This was now his trust. Osman Bey opened the road with his sword and faith. Orhan now had to keep that road open with wisdom, patience, and courage. He knew was the enemy waiting for him to make one angry mistake. If he rushed without thinking, they would not trap him. If he stayed silent for too long, fear would grow. A ruler must know when he told the sword and when he tried to sword. That morning Orhan understood that the coming war would not be won only on the battlefield, it will be won in minds, in hearts, and in secret places where enemies smiled while holding poison in their hands. Inside the council tent, the beys gathering one by one. Security entered with pain on his face, but his voice was still strong. Evron Bey stood near the side, quiet but ready. Aladdin Bey looked at the map spread on the carpet. The roads, castles, rivers, and passages were marked carefully. Every line on that map carried danger. Every road could bring victory or it could bring death. The question stood like a knife in the middle. On the console, if the nib stood with Orhan, the enemy plane would lose one strong arm. If they turned away or waited, then the enemy would gain time, and time in war is often more dangerous than the sword. Orhan looked at the base and spoke in a low voice. He did not shout because a leader does not need to shout when his words carry weight. He said that the enemy wanted to divide them before the real end began. They wanted the Ottoman camp to argue with itself. They wanted Arabs to ask questions again their own way. They wanted tribes to think only about their own safety. Orhan said that this was the oldest game of weak enemies when they cannot break a strong wall from outside. They try to open cracks from inside. He told his men that no one would move with anger, no one would take revenge for pride. Every step would be taken for the future of the state. Security could not stay silent. His heart was burning. He said that patience had a limit. He said the enemy had already crossed many lines. He wanted permission to try with a small group and strike before sunrise. His hand was on his sword and his eyes were full of old fire. The Arabs near had nodded. Many of them wanted the same thing. They wanted to answer blood with blood. But Orhan raised his hand. The tent became silent again. Orhan told security that anger is a good servant but a bad master. A sword moved by pain may cut strong. A sword moved by wisdom cut the chain of the enemy. He promised that no insult would remain unbared, but the answer would come in the way of a state, not in the way of broken heart. Aladdin then spoke. He said the monastery was more important than his word logged. It was only a holy place of important than it logged. It was only holy place for Christian around the religions. It was also a meeting point, a shelter, and maybe a secret bridge between the enemy commanders. Messages could pass through it. Plans could be hidden inside it. A man could enter as a spirit and leave as a spy. A woman could enter as a servant and leave with a future of castle in her hand. Orhan listened carefully. He had already talked about the same thing. The enemy believed the Ottoman would only attack him, horses and sword. They forgot that a ruler who wants to build a state must also understand silence, disgust, and patience. The name of Esporca was also spoken in the council. Her anger had shaken many hearts. She was not only a woman close to the palace, she was a key to something larger. If the enemy used her, they could use emotions against Orhan. If they harmed her, they could open a wound inside the dynasty. Orhan did not allow his face to change when her name came, but Aladdin saw the pain in her brother's eyes. There are some pain a ruler cannot show. A ruler may carry in his heart, but outside he must stand like a mountain. Orhan knew that saving Esporca was important, but learning the enemy plan was just as important. If he saved one person but lost the state, then the enemy would win. If he protected the state but forgot the innocent, then they would lose himself. So he had to do both. The plan began to form slowly. Orhan would not ride openly to the monastery with a great army that would only warm the enemy. Instead, he would use a smaller path which used send men ahead but not all in one direction. Some would move like traders, some would move like tired travelers, some would move through the forest, others would watch the rivers crossing. If Brown Bay would control one hidden line, security would stay near enough to strike in needed. but far enough not to be seen. Aladdin would prepare a second plan in case the enemy expected the first one. Orhan knew that the good plan must have another plan behind it. The enemy may close one door, but the must not be allowed to close all door outside the tent. The camp slowly came to life. Women prepared for the arms, children were sent away from the busy path. Blacksmiths worked without stopping, sparks flew from their hammers like small stars. Every sword that we sharpened sounded like a promise. Every arrow palace in a Quaker seemed to the state was awakened. Mulhan horned all descent tribe. The house of Osman had never been built by the alone woman had carried secret, healed, wound, protect, and raised son and bird metroidums. No once again they stood with strong hearts. Some prayed, some prepared bandage, some looked at the road, waiting for news. The good bring joy or sorrow in another part of the land. The enemy was not sleeping either inside a cold stone room. The Christian Lord, the commanders gathered under candlelight. Their voices were low, but their plans were cruel. They did not see Orhan as only a bey anymore. They feared him because he had begun to act like a sultan. A bey may be stopped by taking one castle. A sultan becomes dangerous because people start to believe in him. The enemy knew that if his tribe, ops, and border warrior fully joined under Orhan rule, then their castle won't become lonely stone in a growing sea. So they wanted to the crust before it comes too strong. The wanted, the confused, the wanted Evian be removed. They wanted Exporca used as bite. Above all, the wanted Orhan angry. Once commander said that Turks before stronger when they are attacked openly, and others said they must be pulled into the shape as doubt. A third man, older and colder than the rest, repelled his anger, won the map, and said that the monastery would be their net. If Orhan came here, they would trap him. If he did not come, they would, as he abandoned his own people. Either way, they were through. They had fought a road to victory, but they made the mistake the proud men often make. They believed their enemy would think exactly as they wanted him to think. At the same time, in the camp, another struggle was taking place. The warriors were strong people. They did not borrow easily. Their horses were fast, their arrows sharp, and their pride older than many kingdoms. Some among the respected Orhan. They had seen his bravery and his justice. Others did not fully trust the Ottoman, yet they feared that joining Orhan completely would make them servants instead of allies. The enemy had sent whisper into their ears. They said, "Today Orhan calls you brother. You tomorrow he will you subject." This world moved from tent to tent like smoke. They did not burn at first, but they made breathing hard. The leader sat before his fire with a troubled face. He knew his people needed a strong side in the coming storm. Naturally sounds safe only to people who do not understand war. When great power clash, the one stand in the middle is often crushed first. Still, choosing a side meant taking a risk. If they choose Orhan and Orhan lost, they would lose their home. If we choose the enemy and Orhan won, their honor would never be clean again. So they waited, watched, and listened. But waited also has a price. A man who waited too long may find that the choice had been made for him. Orhan understood. He heard of the better than his enemies did. He did not want to force them. Forced loyalty breaks quickly. Real loyalty grows from respect, so he sent a message not full of threat but full of trust. He told them that the Ottoman state did not ask for their blood for nothing. If asked them to stand on the side that would protect the land of those who came to divide, burn, and rule by fear. He said that every tribe may keep its name, but all must know which banner protect their future. Their messages reached the tent before evening. Some men laughed at, some became angry, some become silent, but silence is often the first sign that trust has entered the heart. While the was happening, Vion Bay moved with a small group through a narrow forest road. The trees were close together, the ground was wet, the air smelled of the air and smoke. His men followed without noise. Avions knew that someone was watching the road. He felt it from the broken branches, from the sudden silence of birds, from the strange mark near the muds. And good warrior does not only see with his eyes, he listens to the earth. He reads the wind. He noticed when nature becomes too quiet. He stopped. His men are raced to figure. They spread slowly. A narrow flew from trees. One arm fell from his horse before the second arrow came. Evion had already moved. He allowed behind a thick trunk and gave a sharp order. The forest exploded with sound. Steel met steel. Hordes cried. Men shouted from behind bushes and stone. This was not a large army. It was a hunting group. They had come to take Evion alive. That means the enemy needed him to something. They did not only want his death, they wanted to use his body, his name, of his suffering, or as a message. Evion fought with controlled strength. He did not waste a moment. Every strike had a surprise. But the enemy had prepared well. Net hidden ropes and fire pots were placed around the path. One of the enemy soldiers threw burning oil toward the dry brush. Flames gleamed quietly. Smoke covered the road. Evion shouted for his men to move toward his riverside, but another group blocked the way. For a moment the trap looked complete. The enemy captain smiled and old Evion that even brave men burn when the world closes around them. Evion did not answer with sword. He threw his anger into the man's shoulder and the charged through the smoke. His arm followed him. They moved not like men trying to live, but like men refusing to be owned by fear. Back in the main camp, news came before sunset that everyone had been attacked. The messages was wounded. His horses was covered with sweat. He fell near the entrance of the council tent and said only a few words before the healer took him away. Security face changed. He asked for permission again. This time his voice was quieter but more dangerous. Orhan looked at the wounded messengers at the map. He understood that the attack on Evion was not separate, it was part of the same net. The monastery, Sporka, the hesitation, and the attacks in the forest wall are pieces of the plan. The enemy was pulling many ropes at the same time. If Orhan pulled the wrong one, the whole net would close. Orhan gave order fast. He sent one group to spot Evion, but not by the clear road. He sent another to Aladdin to prepare false messages so the enemy spies would hear what Orhan wanted them to hear. Then he called a trusted man and told him to bring clothes that did not belong to a sultan. The man looked confused for a moment, but he obeyed. Security understood first. He stepped forward and said that Orhan should not go himself. The state could not risk its ruler in a hidden game. Orhan answered that a ruler who never touches danger cannot understand the truth of the field. He could not go as proud sultan with banner. He would go as a shadow. Night came again, but this night was different. The camp was full of hidden movement. Horses were prepared away from the main fire. Men changed clothes. Small groups left one by one, each in the different direction. Orhan broke a plain cloak. His face was partly covered. Only those closest to him men to his. He took a small sword, danger as a sign of rank. When he looked back at the camp, he saw the Ottoman banner move under the moonlight. For one short moment, he thought of his father. He remembered Osman Bey's voice telling him that a state he is not carrying by the hand alone, it is carried by the heart. Then Orhan turned away and rode into the dark. The road to the monastery was narrow and dangerous. Rocks stood on one side, dark trees on the other. The room appeared the despair behind clouds. Orhan rode with only a few trusted men. No one spoke unless needed. Every sound could betray them far away. Wolves cried somewhere in the distance. A bell rang from a Christian villain. The wood seems calm, but Orhan knew calm can be the skin of a snake under his poison words. At the camp near the monastery, they saw lights behind the height walls. The place looked before from outside. Its stone walls were old. Its state was strong but not made for war. A traveler could believe it was only a place of prayers. But Orhan saw the guards moving in wrong pattern. Real monks do not stand like soldiers. Real servants do not watch the road with hand near hidden knives. The monastery was not sleeping, it was waiting. Orhan sent one man around the eastern side and another toward the water path. Then he moved with two men toward the lower gate. They carried snakes like traders bringing goods. The guard asked questions. Orhan answered with a tired voice, not too brave, not too weak. A spy must know how to look forgettable. If he looks afraid, he draws attention. He looks too confident, he becomes dangerous. The guards searched the sacks and found only cloth, dried food, and old tools. He allowed them inside. The security was quiet. Candles burned near stone step. A few men in robes moved across the open space. Orhan lowered his head and walked like a man who had two reason to look around, but his eyes missed nothing. He saw two fresh horses marks near the back stable. He saw a small blood stain near a side door. He saw a woman's scarf caught on a broken sign of a piece of stood. He listened, tightening, but did not stop. He had to stand on the outside. Inside one passage, a young servant dropped a bowl. When he saw him, her fear was real. Orhan helped her pick it up and whisper in Turkish very softly, asking if a sporka was inside. The girl's face lost color. She almost stepped back, but Orhan placed one finger near his lips. The girl looked down the passage, then toward a locked door. That was enough. Orhan moved away before anyone could notice. In another room, the enemy commanders were speaking. Orhan could not see them clearly, but he could hear pieces of their plan through a crack in the wall. They spoke of the kidnaps. They spoke of Evian, they spoke of a fire prepared from a public warning. They wanted the Turks to see one of their brave men suffer. They believed fear would travel faster than news. That one voice spoke of as Porca. She was alive, but she was to be moved before down. Orhan, hand tightening. One of his men saw him anger and become worried, but Orhan did not move. He forced himself to listen until the end. His was the hardest kind of courage, not the courage to attack, but the courage to wait while the heart is burning. The enemy plan was now clear. First, the would spread news that Evian had been captured and would be burned alive. Second, they would use a Sporka as bait to fill Orhan toward the wrong road. Third, they would push the Cracks to delay their decisions until the Ottoman lines became weak. Fourth, hidden fighter would strike the rescue group. It was a layered trap. Any one mistake would create another disaster. Orhan stepped back from the wall and gave a silent sign. They had to leave, but not empty-handed. If they only escaped, the enemy could still continue. They needed to break the plan from inside. Orhan ordered one man to find the stable and cut the enemy horses loose at the right moment. Another would open the lower gate. Orhan himself went toward the locked room. Then he locked was old but strong. One of his men worked on his with a thin piece of metal. Every second felt long footstep enough from the far end of passages. Orhan stood in the shadow tightly. He looked, clicked. They opened the door and entered. Sporka was inside. Her hands were tied, but her spirit was not broken when he saw Orhan. Tears came to her eyes, but he did not cry loudly. She understood the danger. Orhan cut the ropes and asked if he could walk. She nodded. She took him. The enemy has spoken of a hidden place near the forest where everyone might be taken. Orhan listened, and the last missing piece is entering its palace. The enemy had wanted him to come over to the monastery, but they had also prepared a second scene in the forest. They wanted confusion. They wanted Orhan manipulate. But now Orhan knew enough to pull the trap around the move quickly around the passage. A guard prepared at the corner before the could shout. Security had covered his mouth from behind. Orhan was surprised for half and breathed. Security smiled in the dark and whispered that the headfall was ordered as such as heard aloud. Orhan gave him one sharp look, but there was no time to argue. Or security had come to plans and had already cleared his side path. Sometimes disappointment and danger sometimes arrived like Mercury. Orhan would speak to him later, for now he used to chance. The monastery began to wake in panic. Horses broke loose in the stable. A fire pot fell in the courtyard, but this time the flames confused the enemy instead of helping them. Bells rang, men shouted in different language. Orhan spoke security and the other moved toward the lower gate. One enemy soldiers broke the wall. Security trucks him down. Another came from the stairs. Orhan moved forward and ended the fight in one clean motion. There was no pride in it, no wasted anger, only need. When they reached the gate, one of Orhan's men was already there, wounded but alive. The gate opened into the cold night. Outside, horses waited as Porca Mountain with help. Security looked back, wanting to burn the whole place, but Orhan stopped him. They had not come for revenge, they had come from truth. The enemy still ended. I believe some part of their plan were hidden. A full fire would reveal too much. A clean escape would create fear in the enemy heart. The would ask how much does Orhan know. That question would hurt them more than ashes. The road into the night behind them, the monastery bells continued to try. Ahead of them, the forest waited. Orhan did not ride back to camp first. He turned toward the palace. Sporka had impurity shouted that Sporka should be taken to safety. Orhan answered that the would be guarded. But if Vion was still in danger, a ruler does not save one life and leave another to burn. They would move with speed but not with blindness. In the forest clearing, the enemy had prepared a cruel stage. Wooden stakes stood in the middle, dry branches were a palace around them. Torches burned in the hands of soldiers. Evion Bey was tried, injured but unbroken. His clothes were torn, blood marked his face, yet his eyes were still proud. The enemy stood before him and spoke like a man already tasting victory. He wanted Evion to beg. He wanted the Ottoman name to shake, but Evion only looked at him and said that a man who feared death has already died. Inside his voice was rough, but it carried through the cleaning. The enemy captain ordered the fire, brought closer at that moment, and a cross cut through the night and struck the torch of a soldier hand, another around followers, and another. The forest came alive with Ottoman security changed from the side with a roar. Orhan came from the darker path, not with a large army but not enough men placed in the right point. The enemy had prepared a ring of fire. Orhan turned it into a ring of steel. The battle was fast and furious. Men slipped in mud. Sparks flew as sword met. Yvonne pulled against the ropes. One arm reached him and began cutting him free. The enemy curtain saw Orhan and understood too late that the prey had never been blind. He tried to run toward the back path, but Aladdin riders closed it. This was the second plan. While Orhan entered the monastery, Aladdin had moved quietly to back the escape road. The enemy captain was trapped by the same method he had tried to use. Orhan faced him in the cleaning. The captain said that killing him would not end the war. Orhan answered that the news this were not ended by one death, but message can be changed one by movement. The enemy wanted the Turks to see Evian burn. Instead, their own men could carry the news. The Sultan Orhan walked into their net and came out holding the rope. The captain attacked. Orhan defended, stepped aside and trucks with control. The fight did not last long. The captain fell. The knees defiant but live. Orhan ordered him taken. A living enemy with information was more useful than a dead one with silence. Evian was freed. He tries to stand straight, though his body was weak. Orhan placed a hand on his shoulder. No long words were needed between warriors. Sometimes one look carries more than a speech. Security laughing with reveal anger. Together he said the enemy had chosen the wrong wood from wire. Evian answered that he was not ready to become smoke. Yet Evian in pain. The smile, it was a smile, but in dark times even a small smile in victory. By down the news began to move as Porca live. Evian was saved. The monastery plan and failed. The enemy commander was captured, but Orhan did not allow celebration to become carelessness. He knew this was only the first gate of the storm. The enemy still had castle, the still had spices, the still had friends hidden among uncurtained tribes. Most of all, the security still had to choose clearly. Victory one night could become danger the next day. It pride entered the camp When Orhan returned, the people gathering quietly, they saw Asporka alive was thanked Allah. They saw Evian wounded but standing, and their hearts became strong again. The wood cried with relief. The Abs raised their sword, but Orhan raised his hand and stopped loud celebration. He told them that they do not want the war yet. They had only stopped one dark plan they rode ahead would be harder. The enemy had shown it method. It would use fear, lies, traps, and fire. The Ottomans' answer would be unity, justice, intelligence, and courage. Then the rider arrived. Dust rose behind them as they camped near the camp. For a moment, every hand moved toward a weapon. No one knew if they friend as man bringing a final refusal. The leader rode at the front. His face was serious. He got down from the horse and walked toward Orhan. The whole camp watched. Even the wind seems to stop. The leader looked at Orhan, then at Evron, then at Asporka, then at the captured enemy commander. He understood what had happened. The enemy had promised weakness, but Orhan has shown strength. The enemy has promised confusion, but Orhan had brought order. The leader placed his hand on his chest and said, "The man who saves his people in silence and defeated his enemy without losing his mind is not only a warrior, he is a ruler." He said the would not stand in the middle anymore. Their arrows won't fly beside the Ottoman. Their horses would ride with Orhan. Their blood would not be sold to the enemies of the land. A deep sound moved through the camp. It was not simple cheering, it was the sound of fear leaving people's hearts. Orhan stepped forward and accepted the captive leader's word with dignity. He did not act proud, he did not act like a man receiving servant. He spoke like a man gathering allies. He said that every tribe under the banner of justice would have honor. He said state would grow not by crushing the brave, not by joining the brave under the purpose. He said the land and road from every loyal heart, but no room from betrayal. The captured enemy commanders listened from the side. His face had changed. Before he had believed the Ottomans were only a rising tribe. Only he saw something else. He saw a state learning quite quickly. He saw a ruler who could enter a trap and return with both people with secret. He saw a tribe beginning to gather, not from fear but from belief. That was the moment he understood the clear, real danger. Castle can assist armies, but castle cannot resist an idea forever. Later, when the camp became calmer, Orhan stood alone near the edge of the hill. The sun rose slowly over the land. The tent glows is softened light. The banners move again below. Men prepared of the next march. Women cared from the wounded. Children looked at Afyon and returned from another world. The Kikom's horses stood among Ottoman horses. It was not perfect peace, but it was a beginning. Aladdin came and stood beside his brother. He said the enemy would not forgive his defeat. Orhan answered that they did not need forgiveness from the enemy, they needed readiness. Aladdin asked him for Orhan trusted fully. Now Orhan looked at the camp for a while before answering. He said trust is like a bridge. Today his first stone had been placed. Tomorrow they would see if bridge could carry Wait, Curity came next, still carrying the marks of the night. He accepted Oran to scold him for following against the full order. Oran looked at him seriously for a few moments. Curity smiled, despaired. Then Oran said that love for the state must obey the mind of the state. A brave man who moves alone can save a life, but he can also ruin the plan. Curity lowered his head. He accepted the world. Orhan had added that last night Allah had made his disobedience useful, but a man should not build in his life an expectation. Curity nodded. He understood. Then Orhan allowed himself a small smile, and Curity, breathing again as Porca from a little distance watched Orhan with quiet eyes. She had seen him not as a ruler sitting on a high seat, but as a small man walking through danger for both love and duty. Yet she also saw the sadness of that path. Orhan could never belong only to one person. His life belonging to the state. His heart could fear deeply from this step had to follow the road of leadership. This truth was painful, but it also the reason people trusted him. A man who puts only his own heart first may be loved. A man who put justice first may be followed for generation. In the enemy castles, the mood was very different. News of the failed plan arrived like a slap. The commander argued, some blamed the monastery guard, some blamed the forest captain, some blamed the spices, but the oldest among them said the truth. No one wanted to hear. They had underestimate Orhan. They had thought he never he proved himself, but he had act like a they had understand Orhan. They had thought he was still a young ruler trying to prove himself, but he had acted like a man who understood both war and statecraft. If he wanted to defeat him now, they would needed a greater plan, darker lies, and the strike. They would reach only his army, but his closest circle. A name was the spoken in the castle chamber, a hidden ally, someone who could enter places where soldiers could not, someone who could move news, gold, and lies. The war was about to become more dangerous because the enemy had understood that open steps were no longer enough. They would now look for the weakness inside the Ottoman side. They would search for pride, danger. Orhan gathered battle would not only be against crack among his own people. That evening Orhan called the council again. This time the air inside the tent was difficult. There was still danger, but there was also strength. These Kypros largest set among them. If Veron was wounded, the present security stood behind Orhan, quieter than casuals. Aladdin Palace, new marked on the map. The captured commanders had given from information, but not enough. The enemy next move was still hidden. Orhan looked at man and said that from that day no one would think the enemy was simple. They had entered a new stage. Every road would be watched, every message would be checked, every friendship would be tested by action, not word. He then played in his hand on the map near the border castles. He said the enemy believed walls could save them, but was only protect people who have courage inside them. If fear enter a castle, the stones become a prison. The Ottomans would not rush blindly, they would. The enemy roads weaken their trust, bring uncertain tribes closer, and show justice to the village that were tried to overthrow Lord. A state does not grow only by taking castle, it grows when people begin to believe that life under its rule will be safer, and more honorable. The Bey listened carefully. This was not only a battle speech, it was the shape of the future empire. Orhan did not use the word empire, he did not need to. The ready was standing in the tent like unseen banner. Every man that felt it, they were not fighting only for one hill, one castle, or one revenge. They was building something that would outlive them. When the councils ended, Orhan remained inside from a short time. The castle burned low, the map opened before him, so many names, so many roads, so many lives. Depending on his choices, he touched the edge of the map and whispered a prayer. He asked Allah for a clear mind, a patient heart, and a strong hand. He could ask for as easy road. Men like Orhan used that easy road rarely lead to great duties. He asked only not to fail. The trust placed on the shoulder outside the camp prepared for the coming day. The first section of this struggle, his hand with rescue and unity, but the larger storm had only begun. The enemy had failed to burn Evron, failed to keep Esporca, failed to turn monastery into Oran grave, the failed keep the away, but wounded enemies become more dangerous than they louder. Play with confidence, they play with separations. As the moon rose over the Ottomans' camp, Orhan walked among his people without guard close to him. He stopped near two blacksmiths, near the wounded, near the woman preparing medicines, near the young Abs who looked at his shine eyes. He spoke like little, but his presence gave strength. A ruler greatest speeches is something simply stand before his people can see him at the end of the night. Orhan looked toward the dark line of enemy land. His face was calm again, but his calm was not pace, it was control. He knew the next move could be harder. He knew betrayal might wear a friendly face. He knew every victory would invite a great test. Still, he did not step back. He had entered the fire and returned with truth, and now he would carry that truth like a sword. The Ottoman state had survived the night. More than that, it has grown not its land yet, but its spirit, and sometimes spirit comes before conquest. First, people believe, then they stand together, then the walls of the enemy begin to shake. Sections 1 and with Orhan standing under the moon, watching the road ahead. Behind are the rescue, the wounded, the loyal, and the newly joined. Before the Alps, castle, spices, and war, but his heart is steady. The enemy wanted to break him, pulling him into darkness. Instead, he learned the shape of the darkness. Now he is ready to walk through it. The shadow inside the cap. Morning came, but peace did not come with it. The sun rose over the Ottoman camp, shining on 110 horses, weapon, and tried faces to a stranger. The camp might have looked strong and safe, but the banners were standing high, the harps were awake. The rider had joined Orhan's side. Esporca was alive. Esporca, Evron Bey had returned from the edge of death. The enemy trap, the monastery had failed, but Sultan Orhan knew that victory can become dangerous when people think the danger is finished. A ruler must see the next storm before the could appear. The people were thankful, but Orhan did not allow the camp to relax too much. They ordered the guard to change their path. The Kurde men at the gate to check every traders, every travelers, and every servant who entered. He ordered the food stores to be watched. He told the messengers to travel in pairs, never alone. Some ups through them. Orders were too strict after a victory, but Orhan understood something then they did not. The enemy had field in the open field and in the monastery. Their next attack would not come with loud horses, it would come with quiet feet. A state is not only destroyed by a sword, sometimes it is damaged by a sword spoke in the wrong ear, sometimes it is weakened by a letter hidden under bread. Sometimes it is poisoned by doubt. Orhan and seized enough to know that the enemy was not only fighting with older soldiers, they were fighting with fears like gold and secret hand. The monastery was not the end of their plans, it was only one branch of a larger tree. Somewhere the roots was still alive. Inside the council tent, the captured enemy commander sat with his hand tied. He was pale, but his pride had not completely damned him. He had tough. He would Ottoman's anger, shouting and quick punishment. Instead, he saw patient. His made. He's more afraid. Anger is easy to understand. Patience is harder. A man who shouts can be pushed into a mistake. A man who burnt may already knows more than the eyes. Orhan captured Aladdin security. Orhan everyone by the Kypros leader. The prisoners looked at each of them. He knew he was the longer in control. He still tries to smile. He had the even if one place failed, the Ottoman could not stop all the fries around them. Orhan sat across them. Him did not answer to once. He let the silence grew. The commander smiled. Weakness. Silence can press harder than a sword. At last Orhan spoke. He told the prisoners that a man who talks too proudly is usually hiding fear. He said the commander would speak because every man spoke and the right door inside them in open. Some men speak because of pain, some because of gold, some because of pride, some because they want to be remembered as important. Orhan said he only needed to learn which one rule. His prisoners heard the commander tries to laugh. He said would be betrayal his own side. Orhan leaned forward and answered that betrayal had already begun among them. The monastery guard had run. The forest soldiers had left their wounded behind. Their lord blamed each other. Their hidden allies were already preparing to save themselves. Orhan did not know all of these curtain, but the news how the fierce work are defeated. Enemy camp always begin by looking for someone to blame. The prisoner's eyes moved for a small moment. That small movement was enough. Orhan was that the word that had tortured him. Aladdin placed a sealed pouch on the carpet. It had been taken from one of the enemy riders during the night. Inside were pieces of coded writing, small marks and a half-burned note. The writing did not give the whole plan, but it carried name, number, and meeting points. One mark appeared again and again. It looks like a black circle crossed by a thin line. If one said he had seen same mark carved on a tree near the ambush. Security said one of the dead attackers had the same sign burned into a leather strip under the armors. The leader forward he had seen the mark too, but not among Christian soldiers. He had seen it carried by traders who had visited his camp there night before the change. The feeling inside the tent until the moment the enemy plane looked like something outside the Ottoman camp. Now it had entered closer. The mark had passed through tent forest path and enemy hands. It was not the sign of non one commander, it was the sign of hidden network. Orhan asked the prisoners about the mark. The commander looked away. That was answering enough. Security stepped forward, but Orhan raised his hand. He did not want fear to come from violence, yet he wanted the prisoners to feel that Orhan already knew more than he truly did. So Orhan spoke calmly and said the enemy of the world was not important. What mattered was the person who carried order through it. He said prisoners mattered. The already used him and left him to him die. If he stayed silent, him name would disappear like smoke. If he smoked, the might at least live long enough to see would truly be tried. Warm the prisoner's face listened. He did not speak, but his silence was changing. It was no longer proud silence. It was no longer proud. It was thinking silence. Orhan told the guard to take him away. Give him water and it let him alone. A man alone him with often before becomes his own enemy. Security wanted faster answering, but Orhan knew that some log break of them while others open when pressure stay long enough. After the prisoners was taken out, the consul turned to the mark. Aladdin said the symbol might belong to a group of spies working between castle and trade roads. Everyone believed they were connected to the planned public burning. The leader said the traders who carried the mark had spoken sweetly about horses at a high price and asked many questions about king's number. At the time it looks like normal trade talk. Now it looked like continuing strength before a battle. Orhan listened, had needed each pieces in his mind. The enemy had sent soldiers, yet they had also sent merchant, prison servant, and maybe even refugees. This one more dangerous than a clear army. An army had a direction and spy as thousand faces. Orhan gave a new order. No one would abuse people without proof. No innocent raider would be punished just because fear. Then enter the camp. Just must remain justice even in war. But every moment would be watches. Every stranger would be questioned gently at first. Every old connections would be checked. The leader would send his own men to search from his marked traitors. Everyone would question the forest villagers who have seen strange travels. Aladdin would study the coordinates. Security would watch the camp from inside, not from the gate. This last order surprised him. Security asked what Orhan meant. Orhan told him that the greater dangers might not come from outside now. It might be hidden among familiar spaces. Security expressions change. He did not like thought. He trusted the camp. He trusted the apes. He trusted the old woman who begged bread, the boys who carried water, the rider who carried for horses. But Orhan said trust does not mean blindness. A loyal man still entered one false man, a good heart can still be tricked by a clever tongue. That the security walked through the camp differently uses. He moved with jokes, a loud word. He differently anger. Now he listened more than he spoke. He watches who stood near the message tent. He watches who asked to any question. He watches who looked affair when guard passes their name. The word harder from the fighting in battle. The enemy stand before you in a camp. The enemy may smile and call you brother. Near the healer tent, Esporca sat with women who were preparing medicine with fair face and calm, but the night inside the monastery had not left her. She could smell the good stone. She could still feel the ropes on wrist. On wrist, she could hear the enemy voices speak about her if she were only a tool, but she did not allow fear to own her. She had the wounded, washes blood from clothes, and spoke softly to those in pain. The women around her respected this. Many people can look brave than they are soft. True strength is seen after terror. A young girl brought Esporca a bowl of water. His hand were shaking. Esporca thinking her about a nasty dark mark near the girl's lips for a moment. Esporca's heart stopped. It looked like the black circle sign from the enemy letter. It looked like the black circle sign from the enemy letter. She gently touched the girl's arm and asked where the marks from. The girl became confused and said she was against a burnt wagon wheel helping carry supplies. As Porca looked closer, it was only ash, not a symbol. Still, the moment showed how fear the change the camp now. Now every stain could like betrayal. Later, Esporca went to Orhan. She did not enter at someone needed comfort. She entered as someone bringing a warning. She told him that fear had begun to move among the women and servants. Not loud fear, but quiet fear. People were asking who could be trusted. Some believed the spy might be among the. Some believe it might be among the old Ottoman servants. Some believe the enemy had placed a cure to the camp. Orhan listened with concern. A camp divided by suspicions can lose without a battle. He thanked Sporka and told her that her eyes had been something important. He then called for a gathering not for whole army but of the people from each part of the camp, ops, women, craftsmen, horse, skipper, messengers, and representatives. He stood before them without a throne, without heavy decoration, only as a ruler among his people. He told them the enemy wanted fear to turn brother without heavy, only a ruler among people. He said questions with needed, but justice would not be allowed. Not man or woman could be blamed because of tribe, language, clothing, or anger. Proof would speak, lies would not. His word moved through the people. Then they do not remove all fears, but they gave fear a well. People began to understand that Orhan saw the danger and would not let panic rule. This mattered in her time. People do not always need comfort, they need directions. While Haz was claiming the camp, Aladdin worked Inside the tent, with the corded knot, the spread, the low table and sturdies, every marks the cord was not complete. Some part were burnt, some part were written in a way meant to confuse. But Aladdin had a patient mind where security broke. Door Aladdin opened knock. He noticed that the number were not money amount. At the first prepared the match distance between water points. The name were not always people. Some were palace written as its they are some people. If old shape meant by another toner, the blind sons meant their walls near the entered road. As the meaning became clear, Aladdin called Orhan. The map changed again. The enemy network was longer than they had thought. The marked group has placed us around the border. The could move message without using main roads. The enemy network was larger than they had thought. The marked group he had palace at round the borders. They could move messages without using main road. They could hide men in roles farm and religious house. The strongest meeting point seemed to be near an old bridge 2 days away. If that was true, the enemy next would not be against the main camp, it might be against the supply road. Orhan understood the danger at once. An army can fight bravely, but without food, arrow, horse house, and medicines, courage became louder. The supply road was the state vein cut in the army would weaken before the castle were even began. He ordered a secret watch on the road. He did not send a large force because they would not warm spice. Instead, he sent target ups younger rider man who knows how to move through hills without leaving clear tracks. He also sent a small clear track. He also sent a small like unit because their horse skills were strong and their presence would blind trust between the two sides. The joint mission was not easy. The Ottoman Alps and Kicker riders did not fully know each other, yet they respected courage but respected needs. Time at first they rode in silence. They kept thought the Ottoman were too disciplined. The Ottoman thought they were too proud. But the road teaches men quickly. When they crossed a narrow pass, one Ottoman horse slipped the near edge. Riders thought the reins before the horse fell. No long speech followed. The saved up only nodded. The Kipkop nodded back. Small moment like that built bridge faster than official word. By night, the riders reached a hill overlooking the supply road. They saw nothing at first, only trees, stone, and a quiet path. But near midnight, three lanterns appeared from away, covered and uncovered in a pattern the enemy was interesting. Men were placing sharp iron pieces under loose soil. Others were hiding jars of behind rocks. They planned to attack the supply carts them and make it look like bandits had done it. It has happened. Some tribe might be Orhan could not forest his own roads. The enemy wanted hanger and shape together. The Ottoman and Knip rider waited until the trap was almost ready. Then they struck from two sides. The attack was quickly. The enemy did not accept a mixed force. They ran toward the bridge, but the Nib cut them off with arrow. The Ottoman moved in with sword. One spy tried to burn the oil jar, but a young Arab kicked him down before the flame touched them. Another carried a message tube. He was captured alive. Inside the tube was a new order. When the road burned, the inner hand must open the tent. Those words were more dangerous than the attack itself. When the message reached Orhan before dawn, he retraced the inner hand, so there was someone inside the camp or close enough to opening something from within. The enemy had not only planned outside attack, they had expected help from a happened person among Orhan outside. Orhan did not show the message to everyone, he shows it. Aladdin security everyone and Sporka each from understood the weight of its security became flavious. He wanted to search every tent. Orhan refused. This a rough search would inspire that they would close if they also hurt the trust of innocent people. Instead, Orhan set a trap of his own. He ordered Aladdin to prepare a false plan and let it prepare clearly near the message tent. The false plan and Osman would move part of the army toward the northern pass in 3 nights in trust. So much movement would happen. The prepare could be left where only someone trying to steal information would. Then Orhan waited. Waiting is one of the hardest duties of leadership. Soldiers like movement. People like clear action, but Orhan knew that a hidden enemy cannot be caught by noise, so the camp continues as normal. Food was cooked, horses were trained, weapons were repaired, prayers were made. But behind the normal life, careful eyes watched that evening as Porka noticed something strange. A servant who usually carried water to see the healer tent took a different path near the message area. He was not a few servant. He had been in the camp of Mouth. His name was Yusuf. He was quite helpful and almost invisible. That made him useful to everyone and noticed by no one. As Porka did not accuse him, she only waited. Yusuf passed near the message tent, stopped, and fixed his sandal and glanced toward the table where the false plan lay. Then he walked away as Porka told security, but security wanted to grab Yusuf at once. She stopped him. She had learned him. Orhan let the finish take the bait before pulling the line. Security disliked this, but he obeyed that night. Yusuf moved again. This time he entered the storage area, took a small cloth bundle and walked toward the animal pens. A boy watching the horses saw with him. Through notice of it, Yusuf then slipped behind a line of guards. Security followed from a distance, silence for once in his life near the outer edge of the camp. Yusuf placed the bundle under a broken wheel. A few moments later, a woman in cloth came from the darkness outside the camp. She looked like a poor village asking for village, but she moved too carefully. She took the bundle and left without speaking. Security let her followed the road, not the hand. Two hidden ops followed the woman into the night. The woman led them to dry invisibles. There another rider waited. He carried the black circle mark under his cloak. The ops captured him. After a short fight, the woman tried to bite a poison seed hidden in her cell, but one op stopped her. Both were taken alive. The bundle held. The help was The spy line had opened. Yusuf was brought before Orhan. Before sunrise, he looked terrified, but not like a brave enemy. He looked like a trapped man. Security wanted to call him a traitor, but Orhan saw something else in his face. Yusuf was guilty, yes, but guilt was different truths, some betrayal for glory, some from hate, some because some they love is held by the enemy. Orhan asked him why. Yusuf began to cry. He said his younger brother had been taken months ago while bringing grain from a village. A marked man came later and told him that if he carried small messages, his brother would live. At first, Yusuf carried only harmless things, a number, a name, a road. Then he request grew. He wanted to stop, but they shone into a piece of his brother's clothing covered in blood. He said he had never wanted harm to come to Orhan. He only wanted his own brother back. He tent became silent. Security anger did not vanish, but it changed shape. Everyone's look away. Aladdin's face was heavy. Asporka felt pain for man, but also fear to what his actions would have done. Orhan sat still. This was the security of the enemy. They did not use evil men. They forced weak and broken people into evil acts. They made judgment harder but unnecessary. Orhan told Yusuf that love for a brother does not give a man right to risk the life of many other brothers. Yusuf lowered his head and said he knew. He asked only them his brother he saved if possible. Orhan did not promise that he did not could control. He said the truth would be searched, Yusuf would be held and questioned, but not killed in anger. Justice would move with a clear mind. From Yusuf information they learned from a hidden prisons near the old bridge, not a large prison but a palace where the Mark network kept hostage. These hostages were used to control servants, traders, scouts, and even small village leaders. This was the heart of enemy shadow system. If Orhan broke it, he would not only save people, he could many invisible ropes. The new machines were prepared. It had to be small, fast, and quiet. Orhan wanted to go himself, but Aladdin argued against this strongly. The stage has already risked too much at the monastery. This time Orhan agreed to stay near the main camp, but only because another danger was growing on the castle side. He sent everyone big security and a small mixed force of Ottoman and keep riders. Porka asked to help because Yusuf had described women and children among the hostage. Orhan refused at first. The road was too dangerous, but as Porka said, some doors open more easily for a woman bringing medicines than an armed man. She did not ask to fight, she asked to be useful. Orhan looked at her and saw not stubborn but purpose. He allowed her to go under strong protection. The rescue group left before sunset. They traveled without banners. The air was cold and the road was rough. Evian, still wounded, rode with pain but did not complain. Security told him he looked like a man held together by pride and bandage. Evian answered that pride was stronger than some bandage. The rider laughed quietly. This small laughter is the roadmen who laugh together before danger are less likely to abandon each other during danger. By midnight, they reach the old bridge. It crosses a narrow river between two rocky sides. The bridge itself was half broken but still unstable. Near it stood an abandoned mill. Yusuf he had prisoners were kept below it. The palace looked empty, no torches, no guard inside, but Evian did not trust empties. He sent two riders around the back. Security crawled close to mill and found fresh footprints near the door. Porka saw smoke coming from cross law in the stone. Someone was inside. The group waited until a guard came out to throw dirty water into the river. Security catch him silently under pressure. The guard relieved. There were 6 men inside and 12 hostages below, but the also said a warning bell was connected to the lower door. If openly wrongly, rider from a nearby camp would come quickly. Evian studies the door and the bell line. This was not a normal presence. It was a trap built for rescue attempts. Sporka then suggests entering a healer. There was sick prisoner inside and the guard might allow medicine. It they believe the woman came from the marked network that has captured has woman messengers earlier as Sporka still had her cloak. It was risky, but it might open the door without raising the bell. Security hated the idea. Evron also hesitated, but time was short. It was waited until morning. The hostage might be moved. Sporka wanted the cloak around herself and walked toward the mill with one hidden danger and a small medicine bag. Her heart beats fast, but her steps were steady. She knocked on the door in the pattern they had learned from the captured messengers. A guard opened a small window and asked for the sign. Sporka showed the black mark on a strip of cloth. The guard crossed and opened the door. He believed she had come from the network. Inside, the air smelled of damp wood, smoke, and sickness. One guard sat near the stairs, another was eating, two were sleeping. Sporka kept her head low and said she had ordered to check the hostage because one was close of death. The man laughed. One said hostage only needed to breathe to live. Well, Sporka well forced herself not to react. She asked to see them. The guard took her down the stairs below the mill. The prison sat in the dark. Taller man, woman, and two boys. Yusuf's brother was there, thin and weak but alive. As Sporka recognized him from Yusuf's description, she began checking the prisons while secretly cutting from rope with a blade hidden under the sleeve. She whispered that help was near. The prison's eyes filled with hope, but she warned them not to move yet. Above security and Evron waited for the signal. The signal was simple. A small cloth dropped for the lower windows into river. Minutes passed, then more. Minutes security patience began to break. Finally the cloth fell. Evron gave the order. The attack began with the back door. The two riders who had gone around entered first and broke the sleeping guard. Security burst through the front like a storm. Evron cut the bell line before it could be pulled. One guard shouted, but a arrow struck the wall inside his head, warning him that the next one would not miss. The night was short but dangerous. It tight room. One mistake can kill a friend. Security took a cut on his arm but kept moving. Evian knocked her leader down and held a blade to his throat. Sporka brought the hostage up one by one. Some could walk, some had to be carried. Yusuf's brother collapsed when he saw the open night sky. The have believed the would die. Underground, Akib's rider lifted him onto a horses without asking which tribe he came from. In one moment, the rescue was no longer only Ottoman business, it became a shared duty, but the danger was not finished. A horn sounded from the bridge. Someone he escaped or another signal and been sent. Enemy riders were coming. Evron ordered the prisons move for security. Stay behind with a few men to the pursuit. Sporka wanted to help the wounded, but Evron had the living hostage where now the mission. She understood and rode with them. The chase through the dark road was hard. Hostage slows them. The enemy riders were fresh arrows fire from behind. One Ottoman fell about. A rider turned back to pull him into his own horse. The road narrowed near the broken village. Evron made a quick choice. Instead of crossing the main bridge, he led the group through the shadow part of the river. The water was freezing. Horses struggled. The sick prisoners cried out, but the enemy rider, expecting them to take the bridge, lost time. Security then part of the old bridge support with an axe when the enemy tried to cross in force in weak stone broke. The front rider fell into the river and others stopped in confusion. Security laughed loudly across the water and shouted, "Then old bridge should not trust bad men." Then he rode after the other by down. The rescue group returned with the hostage. The camp woke to a different kind of news. Not only had a spy been found, but the hostage used by the enemy had been freed. Yusuf was brought out under guard. When he saw the brother alive, he fell to the ground and wept. His brother also cried, but he could not barely stand. The camp watched in silence. Many had been ready to hate Yusuf. Now they saw the chain that had been placed around his neck. His guilt remained, but the enemy currently was clearer. Orhan came forward. He did not free Yusuf at once. That once be unjust to those enraged by his action. But he did not turn him as a simple traitor. Zethar, he said, Yusuf would face judgment, but his for service to the enemy would be weighed. The rescue hostage would be cared for. Their name would be recorded. Their village would be warned. The mark network would be haunted. The decision showed the people something important. Orhan was not ruled by softness and he was not ruled by purity. He was ruled by balance. A state needs this balance. Too much mercury invites betrayal. Too much harshness creates rebellion. Justice must stand between the two likes of straight sword. The rescue changed the camp. Suspicions did not vanish, but it became sharper and cleaner. People no longer blamed Wu group. They understand that the enemy used pressure and hostage. They gained respect because their rider had helped save Ottoman prisoner. The Ottoman gained respect because they treated rescued strangers with care. Trust grew not through speeches but through shared danger. Still, Orhan did not smile easily. He knew the enemy had lost an important secret tool, and that being that would answer. The answer network would not escape this quietly. The caster lord would feel their hidden lines breaking. They would need a louder strike, one that could restore fear. Orhan expected either an attack on the camp or an attempt to kill one of the newly allied leader. He ordered out double guard around the tent, not because he disturbed them, but because he knew they were not a target. That evening, he cab leader came of Orhan privately. He thanked from him protecting his people without making them feel like prisoners. He admitted that some among his warriors and doubt the Ottoman way. But after the rescue and the fair treatment of Osman Yusuf, their hearts were changing. He said, "Men follow strength, but they stay for justice." Orhan answered them, "Justice that only roots strong enough from a long-lasting state. Fear can build a wall quickly, but the wall cracks from inside. Justice grows slower, but it holds." Aladdin then arrived with new information from the captured document and hostage. The marker network has one more major meeting place larger than Old Mill. It was called the Black Institute near a trade road between two border castles. Many travels passed through it. Merchants, soldiers, printers, messengers, and villagers all used it. If the network controlled that in, they could move secret across the region without being noticed. More importantly, a high-ranking enemy agent was expected there within 2 days. Orhan looked at the map. The Black Inn was not close to the main Ottoman road, but it was close enough to threaten future companions if they captured the agent. Then they might learn. Watch. Castle Lord was leading the shadow war, but if they attacked openly, the agent would flee. They needed discuss again. Security zone was the head. This he said every day now they were becoming traitors, prisoners, Helder and Shadow. He asked when they would simply ride and break a gate. Orhan answered that he day of gate would come. But first they had to blind the eyes watching the those gate and enemy the merchant while spices count every step in walking into a prepared grave. The black in mission would be different or hard decisions he would go but not himself. Aladdin argued again, but this time Orhan refused to stay back. The accepted agent might know the larger plan. A lesser commander might mission a hidden meaning. His world Orhan wanted to hear and see his own eyes. He would take only a few people, security as a rough horses, sailors, Forca as a traveling noblewoman under protection, Ibron as a silent guard, speed his injuries and two rider posing his hired escort. Aladdin would remain near the camp and prepared spot its thing turned bad. Before leaving, Orhan visited Yusuf's brother. The young man was weak but awake. He told Orhan that in the prison he heard the guards speak of the red morning. He did not know what it meant. They want when the red morning came. Even the Turks would not know which banner to follow. This troubled Orhan deeply. A phrase like that could mean many things: a planned miracles, a false flag attack, a foreign order, or an attempt to turn allies against each other. The enemy wanted confusion around banners. That means they might try to use Ottoman sign or both. The road to the Black Inn was busy enough to hide them. Traders moved with carts, shepherds pushed animals through dust. Pilgrims walked with dry feet. Orhan wore simple clothing and kept his face partly covered from the sun. Security played his role too well, according loudly about his horses with anyone who looked at him. Sporka moved him with quietly dignity like a woman used to travel but not willing to speak to every stranger. Ibron watches everything from under his hood. When they reached the Black Inn, the place looked alive and harmless. Smoke rose from kitchen. Horses was tied outside. Men sat under shade drinking and talking. A musician played a tried tune near the door, but Orhan saw sign of hidden order too. Many men looked at the entrance. When a man travel arrived, the stable boy checked saddlebags with fearful eyes. The inner keeper smiled too quickly. A palace can be full of sound and still feel secret. They entered as travel. Security complained about the food before tasting it. This made people laugh and helped him look natural. Orhan sat in a corner where he could see the room. Sporka listened to the woman near the inner door. Everyone stood where the wall like a guard who captures only about payment. The riders went to the stable and watching the horses for horse. Nothing happened. Traveling come and went. Some were real, some were not. Then near sunset a man arrived wearing the cloth of a wealthy cloth merchant. He had soft hand, but his eyes was not soft. The inner keeper became nervous when he saw him. A private room was prepared quickly. The man carried no visible weapon, but two guards entered him separately, pretending not to know him. Orhan knew this was likely the agent. Sporka created the opening. She complained to the inner keeper that her room smelled for smoke and demanded another place to sit while the inner keeper argued. Security knocked over a cup and began a loud fight with a threatened over a horse's heel in the confusion, Orhan moved near the private room and heard voices through the wood. The agent spoke of the red morning. He said the false banner was ready. He said the would be blamed from blood they did not spill. He said the Ottomans would answer before asking questions, then the alliance would break. After that, his Castle army would strike the divided camp. Orhan stood turned cold, but his mind stayed clear. This was the real plan. The enemy wanted to stage an attack using sign or Ottoman sign, using both sides to blame each other. The new alliances was the target. Everything before had been preparation. The monastery, the hostage network, the supply road, Yusuf the Black in all of it led to word breaking trust. Before Orhan could hear more, the door behind him opened. One of the agent guards saw him for one sharp second. Both men understood then truth. The guard reached from his blade. Orhan struck first, pulling him into the shadow, but the noise was enough. The private room opened. The agent saw Orhan's eyes and knew his was no simple traveler. The inn exploded into chaos. Security fake argument became a real fight. Evron blocked the black door as Porca moved behind a wisdom pillar as a knife flew past her. The rider rushed in from the stable. Table broke, lamps fell, men shouted, some travels ran in fear, others pulled hidden weapons, proving the were part of the network. The agent tried to escape through a floor hedge. Orhan followed him down into a storage tunnel. The tunnel was narrow and dark. The agent moved fast, but Orhan was faster. At the end of the passage, the agent turned with a small curved blade. He was not only a messenger, he knew how to fight. The duel was clear, silent, and dangerous. The agent aimed from Orhan's throat at his side. Orhan blocked, stepped in, and struck from main twist. The blade fell, but the agent smiled and kicked a lantern toward barrels of oil. Fire spread quickly above. Security smelled smoke and shouted for everyone to get out. Everyone pulled one wounded cap rider toward the door. As Porca had the real traveler child who had fallen under a table, Orhan grabbed the agent before the could escape and dragged him through the smoke. The man fought like a snake, trying to bite, twist, and break free. Orhan slammed him against a support beam and held him until security came down to help. They escaped the black inn and flames climbed the roof. The network men who survived ran into the field, but many were captured by the sport riders. Aladdin had palace from the road. Orhan looked at the burning inn and understood that a hidden enemy often burned its own house rather than let its secret be taken. But this time the agent was alive. Under questioning, the agent refused to speak at first. Then Orhan showed him the coded paper, the rescue hostage, and the capture messengers. The agent realized too many lines had been broken. He had bitterly and said the blamer banner had already been sent. The men who would carry them were already moving. By sunrise, blood would fall between Ottoman and keep tent. Orhan did not waste another breath. He mounted his horse and ordered everyone back to camp and his full speed. The night ride and harsh horses formed. Riders learned now no one spoke. Every moment mattered. If they arrived too late, the enemy false attack could begin. The Ottoman Guard was kept assigned during an attack. They might answer with anger. In Quebec was Ottoman weapon near their tent. They might believe betrayal had started. The alliance could be die before morning. At the camp, Aladdin was already sensed trouble. Shout has reported Stager's movement near the western ridge. Orhan arrived just before dawn, covered it smoke and dust. He gave orders sharp, deep. He no wood can attack without his command. The kept leader was called. The stand beside him. In front of both groups, the guard were told to watch to outer darkness, not each other. Then he read morning began from the western ridge. Rider came wearing Quebec color. They shout arrows toward the Ottoman horses low at the same time. From the eastern side, men wearing Ottomans making attack near the Quebec tents. For one treble moment, confusion spread exactly as the enemy wanted. Osman Ab shouted that Kipps has betrayed them. Kipps' warriors shouted that Ottoman had attacked their sleeping men. Hands went to sword. Every eyes filled with anger. Orhan rode into the middle before the first wrong blow could be made. He voiced hundred across the camp. He shouted no one would raise a sword against Ali while he alive. The camp leader stood beside him and shouted the same to his people. The sides of the camp, two leaders side by side, facing the fire. Together it forced men to pause, and a dead pause entered. Security captured one of the falls and tore open his sleeves. Under it was black circle mark. Ivan brought down of the false Ottoman attacks and found the same sign. The proof spread faster than anger. The camp understood this was not betrayal. This was threat made by the enemy. Now the real battle became. Ottoman and Kiprans turned outward together. The false riders, seeing where their plan failed, tried to flee, but Orhan had already ordered the outer pass blocked. Aladdin men crossed the network road. Kikran archers cut off the bridge. Security led a charge through the western side. Ivan wounded, but Phryzes broke the eastern group. The enemy who came to create division found themselves trapped between the very allies they wanted to separate. The sunrise turned the sky red, but not in the way the enemy planned. It does not become the red morning of broken trust. It became the red morning of exposed lies. When his last attackers was captured, the camp stood breathing hard. Some tents were damaged, some horses were wounded, a few men had fallen, but the alliances had survived. Orhan walked among both Osman and warrior. He ordered the wounded tread without asking which tribe they belonged to. The order to capture false banner man had for public proof. Then he stood before the camp, the torn false banner in his hand. He said the enemy had tried to make them bleed anger, but today had been chosen patient over range. He told them this was the real victory, not only defeating attacker but defeating the lie before it become trust. The leader stepped forward and cut his palm and a small blade. He let his blood fall on the ground and said that anyone who tried to divide a false sign would answer to both people. Orhan did he the same. He did not to show, but as a promise, the people watched as Ottoman and Quebec blood touched the same earth. This image would travel farther than any written message. By noon, the camp was no longer the same. The alliance had been tested by fire and had been broken. Yusuf's story has revealed the security of hostage control. The old mill rescue had cut one hidden rope. The black inn had exposed the false banner plan. The head morning had failed, but the enemy was not finished. Orhan knew that a plan this large did not come from small men. Behind the market to network stood a great mind, someone close to the castle, someone with gold soldiers and patience. In the final hours of the day, the capture agent finally spoke. One man. He did not say it loudly, he whispered it. His name itself could hear him. The name belonged to a powerful enemy lord who had not yet appeared openly in the struggle. A man known from smiling during peace talk and ordering meals at night. A man who had sent gift to some tribes, letter to some bay, and promised to anyone willing to sell tomorrow for comfort today. This man was not only defending his castle, he was building a wall of lies around the while fortune Orhan stood when they heard the name. The room became still. Aladdin understood at once that the coming war he changed shape again. Curiosity had sent word. If eyes grew cold, Asporka looked at Orhan at sea, saw the calm fire. He returned to his face. Orhan said only one thing. He said that shadows are powerful only until the sun rises. That night, the Ottoman camp did not sleep deeply. Guard watches the right hardly move between tents. The stay close to their horses. The Arabs keep weapon their hand. But the fear was different. No, it was longer. The fear of friend knocking was stood beside them. It was the fear before a knows enemy and fear that is earliest of carry. Orhan stood against the night sky looking toward the border caster. In section 1 he had entered the enemy trap and saved live. In section 2 he had found the enemy shadow inside the land and stopped it from breaking his alliance. But the new section 3 would demand more. The hidden lord had been named. The false banner had failed. The Kypros had chosen third side in blood. Now its blood enemy. Now the enemy would no longer play only with spices. Now the castle themselves would begin its moves. The castle that waited the next morning did not feel like a new day. It felt like the same war wearing a new face. The camp had survived the red morning, but the smell of smoke still stayed in the air. Broken arrows were gathering from the ground. Torn cloth was removed from the tent. Wounded horses was washed. One treated man who has almost raised sword again. Their own allies now walked with heavy hearts. They knew how close they had come to disaster. One wrong shout, one careless strike, one angry order, and the new bond between the Ottoman and the Keeps could have turned into blood. Sultan Orhan understood this better than anyone. He stood in the center of the camp and looked the men around him. They were strong, but strength alone was not enough. A strong arms still be folded. A brave heart can be pulled into a trap. Yesterday the enemy had not tried to defeat the enemy with large army. They had tried to make them defeat each other. That was the kind of war Orhan hated most because it does not attack the body first. It attacks trust at once. Trust is broken. Even victory becomes weak. The name taken from the capture agent was now on every important tough was, but not in public. Orhan did not allow it was spared through the camp. Yet name was Valence of Lord Castle of Araton. He was known as a man with clean clothes soft word and dirty hand. In public, he spoke of peace, trade, and honor. In secret, the broad traitor used hostage, was sent killer under false banners. He did not fight like a warrior who wished to the burn. Remember, with pride, he thought like a spider waiting a corner while others struggling in this web. Our drones can castle stood on a high rocky hill guarding the road between the river valley and the western passes. Its walls were thick, its tower were sharp against the sky. The road to it was narrow, vast, and dangerous. No army could reach unseen. No large force could surround it quickly. The castle had food stores, water walls, and hidden path known only to its own men. Many rules had wanted it, few had taken it. For Orhan, of stones was more than stone, it was the head of the shadow network. It Valen stayed safe inside those walls. The lies would continue, more false attack would come, more tribes would be tested, more servants would be forced into betrayal. The snake had to the pull from the rock inside the council tent. The lamp lay open again. Orhan stay with Aladdin Bey. Ibron Security, the leader and the most trusted commander. A small mark show are towns around it were smaller points, villagers, forest roads, old wells broken to wood and secret resting place used by the marked network. Aladdin explained that the castle could not be taken by a quick attack. In front gate face a step road, and the tunnel could fire arrows from both sides. The back side had cliff, the north side had a dry channel, but it was washed. The south side had a lower wall, but reached it required passing through open ground. It they marched openly. Valence would see them long before they arrived. Security palace is placed on the map and said the walls also wall. When enough brave men climbed them, some up smiled, but Orhan did not. He did not. He told security that brave men were not stone to thrown at a wall. Every life had value. A rule was justice. Loyal man for bridge does not deserve loyalty. The castle would be taken, but not by anger. They would first cut its eyes, then its ears, then its breath. Only after that watch they touch it hair. Ibron still carrying this wound spoken next. He said the supply lines of Atrons was stronger than accepted. The castle received grain from two villages made from hills, spears, and iron from a small mine road. If those road and walk close, wares would feel pressure, but if the Ottomans attacked the village harshly, the open might run to violence for protection. Orhan agreed the villagers was not the enemy. Many common people under castle rules was tied to taxes, fare, and forced labor. If Orhan wanted to build a state, he could not treat every village fair an enemy, castle, or guild. He had to separate the cruel lord from the people living under him. The leader suggested using horses' speed. His ride could move in small groups, strike the supply road, and disappear before the castle cavalry arrived. Aladdin said that would weaken Valen, but they also needed proof of his cry. If they took the castle without proof, other Christian lords would call Orhan a breaker of peace. If they exposed the hostage network, the false banner, and the marked spices, some villagers might open their gates. Wiggly Orhan listened to both. War needed speed, but rule needed reason. A plan slowly formed. A first step would be to each the village around aroused not a raider but had protectors. Orhan would send a word that no farmer, sheep, or cram fast would be harmed if they not raised weapon. Any family forced to serve violence would be given safely if they came forward. Any hostage information would be rewarded. The second step would be capture the main road and stop in iron from reaching the castle. The third step would be take the old watch over near the dry channel. From there they could observe the lower wall. The final step would depend on what they learned. Orhan did not walk to attack a wall before knocking the weakness behind it. That evening messenger led the camp in different directions. One carried open messages, some carried secret orders, some carried nothing written at all, only words held in memory. Orhan knew that written orders could be stolen. A lawyer tongue was sometimes safer than paper. The keeper's rider moved fast, light and quick. They rode not to fight but to watch. Everyone prepared a group for the main road. Security begged to go with the first strike and his first Orhan alone, but everything in night palace and ahead over his heart and promised through everyone know his word often become excited before the mind did. Sporka also found a palace in the plan after the rescue and the old mill. The freed hostage has begun to speak. Old one woman had her daughter. She was still inside Arthur serving in the kitchen. A boy said he had carried water near a hidden door under the lower wall before he was taken away. Another man left before dawn. Sporka with the rescued people of honor listening gentle. She did not push them too hard. Some memories were like wounds. If touched badly, they close. If touches with care, they open from their broken story. She helped Aladdin draw a better picture of the castle's secret life. By night, one important clue appeared. The car that entered every third night were not carrying only food, they were carrying prisoner messages and sometimes bodies. They used the old water passages under the lower wall. The passage was narrow, partly covered by stone and hidden by bushes near the dry channel. It had one carried rainwater out of the castle, but valves had turned into a secret door. If Orhan could reach that passage, the might enter at once without breaking the main gate, but he clue came with danger. The passage was watched by men loyal to Valen, not regular soldiers. These men carried the black circle mark. They were not many, but they were silent and cruel. They went the hidden road. They went how to disappear. They would kill prisoners before allowing them to be freed. If Ottomans moved too early, the hostage inside the castle might die. Orhan stood outside his tent after hearing this. The night was cold, the stair was clear. He thought about the difference between conquering land and carrying responsibility. Taking a castle could be simple. If he cared only about victory, he could burn the village, block the road, and wait for hunger the open gate. But what kind of state would grow from that? Fear might give him wall, but justice would give him people. His fear had taught him that a ruler must only defeat the enemy. He must become the answer to the prayers of the oppressed. Atoms would test whether Orhan could do that before dawn. Security and Ifron reached the main road. The path passed between two hills with thick rushes one side and loose stone on the other. A small guard post stood near the bend Smoke rose from its roof. Men inside were careless because they believed the Ottoman were still recovering from the false banner attack. That mistake stock cost them dearly. Evron sent two ups around the back while Curity walked openly toward the post with a sack over his shoulder, pretending to be a trader whose mule had run away. The guards looked at him and told him to leave. Curity began complaining loudly, saying his mule had more honor than the man of our thrones. The guards stepped out, angry. That was the moment the Ottoman arms moved. The post fell without a loud fight. One guard tried to run, but an arrow struck the ground before his foot. His frozen Curity tried them with a smile and said the earth was wearing him not to the foolish. Evian searched the post and found records of iron shipment. Some were marked with the same black circle. More important, he found a sealed letter from Valen ordering the mine workers to prepare extra chain meant prisoner. Prisoner meant the castle was accepting new hostage or planning to move old one. The mission more urgent. These mine networks were frightening. When the Ottoman arrived, the expected punishment. Instead, Ibrahim gathered them and said no worker would be harmed. Only the guard and balance officer would be taken. One